The owner turned around and said to me, "This is the best company culture we've ever had in any department, in any team, anytime we've ever been in business." And that to me was my big reward for all that work, knowing that I had built something which the company was proud of. People were proud to work there. And that to me is ultimately the mark of how you grow businesses. All right, welcome to another episode of Current Homes in the Podcast. My name is Tony Rodriguez. As always, thank you for joining the show. Today is an interesting day. Today is something that I think a lot of companies miss out on, and it's becoming a reason that people ultimately stay in a company or they leave. And what are we talking about? Not pay, not time off, none of those things. It's about culture. It's about the company culture that you're creating, how to create that, maybe some tips and tricks to make your company culture better. You know, when I worked at my previous role, I was there for about a year. We took I started, it was me and 4 managers that I got hired. And when I got hired, my boss had come to me and said, "Hey, look, today's your first day." And what's really great about that is you have 4 managers who are going to be underneath you. Now, we have to give you a heads up. All 4 managers are not going to like you from the start. And I was like, wow, this is a really great way to start my role. And they were like, well, here's the deal. All 3 of the people work here and all interviewed for this position, but they didn't have enough skill set, so we had to pass. One is an outside hire who wanted your position and has taken some work to get that person to come aboard, but ultimately none of them got the role and you did. So we're assuming that there's going to be a little bit of tension in there, but they're good people, so that's what you got to work with. So you have 4 managers, none of them are probably going to like you, and a team of 12 total reps to work in retail lead generation. And that was in New York, and I'm located in New Jersey. So right away, we start with some challenges, but it's fine. So the reason I bring that up is because before we get into customer questions that come in from people, you really take a look at the situation, and there's a lot of ways to handle it. So what I decided to do is a really good idea of how culture has to start from the very, very beginning of meeting people and getting to know each other. So the first thing I did when I set the meeting is I asked that before we did anything else, what I needed to do is the 4 managers and myself needed to get into a room. And what I asked them to do is we were going to just talk about the state that our current company was in, practices they liked, things they didn't, things they wanted to change, feedback. I wasn't coming in to be like, hey, I'm your boss and I've done this a million times and this is how we're going to do it. The very first way that I wanted to approach this was saying to people, I value you. I value your time. I value your thoughts. I value your suggestions, your advice of how this company operates, how we can make it better, your feedback. What I did tell them ultimately is I value it, but just understand at the end of the day, those decisions have to be made by me. But I want this to be something where you feel like you're a part of it. And I only had 2 rules, and I think this was really important. Number 1, none of us were leaving until we agreed. So we could make the meeting 2 hours, the meeting could be 8 hours. But we weren't leaving the room until we all agree on how the team was going to operate, at least for the first 90 days, right? Because when you go into it, obviously in time, some situations change, things should evolve. But I thought, at least sitting down with this team and creating a 90-day plan would make sense. The second thing was I would not force you or make you agree with any point I have ultimately at the end of the day. If it was something where you felt like, hey, that's not how I operate, then what I told everybody in a very nice way is, unfortunately, if we can't come to an agreement on how the team operates, then unfortunately you just won't be able to be part of the team. And I know that sounds crazy to begin with, but the reality of it is I'm building a culture. And I'm building a culture by also instilling that culture into the people that are on the team. And what I wanted to do is create an environment that was democratic in some form or fashion, but also that we all were united. Now, when I say that you have to agree, what I mean by that is we have to, on the forward facing out to our people, all be united in the decisions and the talk tracks, right? So for instance, if we were talking about, the five of us settle on a script, a lead generation script. If somebody, one of the employees or somebody underneath us says, hey, I don't really like this script, who chose it? You were not allowed to say, well, it wasn't me. It was really Tony. It had to be like, hey, as a team, this is what we chose. If it works, great. If not, together, we will make that change. If somebody was uncomfortable doing that, then the reality was, after spending an entire day together, openly talking and trying to work things out, that my take on it was you just couldn't be part of the team. And, building culture, you got to build it with the right people. So we go into the meeting, and here's how I approached everybody. And I just, right from the start, addressed the elephant in the room. I said to everybody, hi, my name's Tony. Before I even get into my background and all that stuff, none of you are going to listen, because there's probably a little bit of feelings towards me and not even getting to know me, right? I said, from what I've been told, every single one of you is interviewed for this position, which at the time was the national director. And I said, every one of you didn't get it. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because obviously, as we talk about things, there's probably going to be these moments where you're going to say to yourself, well, I wouldn't do that. And we got to get past that. I said to them from the bottom of my heart, I mean this wholeheartedly, and this is how I started our culture. I don't want my job. I said, if I am currently the national director next year, and none of you have grown in your career, making more money, or maybe even obtained my position, then I have failed you. I have failed all of you. So know this coming into the job. I don't want this job. I want one of you or all of you to have this job. And my knowing of what this is, my benchmark of success is going to be how far you four make it in this company. So I just want you guys to know, whether, sales and lead generation and all the things that come with how we operate a home improvement company, demos and sales and leads and everything that comes involved. None of that's going to be as important to me as the fact that you four are successful here. Because if you guys are successful, that means ultimately we have to be successful. And whatever happens to me, my belief is that if my team is successful and my people are successful, then I'll be successful, right? So starting the meeting off by letting people know that my actual interest, my best interest, was actually to make them better. And that my being here was really to help them. It had nothing to do with me trying to send my own career on the backs of people that were underneath me. And that really set the tone. And I'll be honest with you, everyone, we spent about 8 hours. We went through a lot of stuff. Hours, schedules, days, things people like, things people didn't like, aired out a whole room full of grievances. But you know what? It is contentious as that happened. The meeting was at little points of it. And it was great in some respects. And we had to take breaks in other parts of the meeting. Ultimately, what I was able to accomplish in about 4 years of being in that company was growing from those 4 managers and those 12 people to over, and I think the year I was there, I just started in December. So this meeting was in December, but I start my track of success that January. They had done $220,000 in sales total, which if you're listening to this podcast, is nothing, right? Especially in home improvement. That's a couple of solar jobs, it's a couple of roofs. It's not a lot, right? My first year there, I was able to do $25 million in sales. And then it was 90, and it was 300 million. And then we went and took over 11 states, and I had about 600 and change of people underneath me. And I say that to let you know that that's how you have to start to get to the point where you get that big, right? So it doesn't matter about, experience matters somewhat, and knowing your scripts and how lead generation works will get you so far. Being a great leader of people and being a great manager is what's going to help really take growth and ultimately expand it exponentially. So culture to me is super important. I say all that because at the end of our first year when we were successful, we were having a company party, and the company wanted to know how I wanted to do it, and I wanted it centralized. I wanted it located really close so everybody could make it. We got buses to bus people in. And I wanted to make the award ceremony and celebration about the people who were there. And we had a ton of fun and celebrated people and did some wacky stuff and gave awards away and really celebrated the people that really delivered for us, which was great. We made it all about them. And at the end of the meeting, or I call it a meeting, but the end of our celebration to mark the end of our great first year, I got pulled into the office by the owners of the company. And I distinctly still remember this. The owner turned around and said to me, "This is the best company culture we've ever had in any department, in any team, anytime we've ever been in business." And that to me was my big reward for all that work, knowing that I had built something which the company was proud of and people were proud to work there. And that to me is ultimately the mark of how you grow businesses, is by, instilling that culture, instilling that belief in your people and helping them get to the next level. So I say all that because to me, that is a huge part of success in any company. I'm not saying you could take me and throw me into any business, but I'm pretty sure if I would tell you, my belief is you could take me and teach me any business and I'll learn it, but you can't take anybody and teach them how to be a great manager or a great leader. Not everyone can do that, but you can teach people skills. So, it's a little bit of balancing act of how talented you are with your skills, but, are you coachable? Are you a great manager? Could you be a good leader? Is it really about you? So I say all that so we can get to our questions today. So what we did is we had a lot of people write in to the team about just this thing, culture. And so what I did is out of all those questions that came into the podcast, we took the top 10, or we took 10 of the most asked questions with kind of, people ask these questions a little bit in the same way. And we'll take the time to answer them here. What I'd love to do is if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I could add to that. Hey, I've got another thought on that. That's great. Feel free to send me a message. Feel free to write in. But let's roll right through these and see where we get. So first off, we have James. James is writing in from Denver, Colorado. He is a roofing contractor. How do you balance hiring for cultural fit versus hiring strictly for skills and experience when you're building your crews? All right, so it's a really great question, and it kind of goes back a little bit what we're saying. So when you're in the interview process, let's be honest, you're clearly looking for skills and experience. That's what recruiters do. That's what resumes do. So the way that worked for us was, the recruiting team, their sole job is to look for skills and experience. And, they're going through resumes. And if you're watching this now, it's AI is probably going through your resumes, right? But, when we looked at how we set up the actual interview process, that is how you start to determine whether someone's going to be a cultural fit. So one of the things that was really important to me was talking to my recruiting team constantly. I definitely had bi-weekly meetings with them, and we talked about candidates. We talked about how to interview. We talked about, how to approach these things. And, I wanted to hear about their feedback and what type of questions they ask when they go through resumes. The reason you do is because your recruiting team is the lowest level of person that a new hire is going to meet. And to me, how that new hire treats that recruiter is already start of great culture, right? So I talk to the recruiter and say, oh, look, so I'm going to interview with Tony. Tell me about Tony. And your recruiter by nature will say, oh, well, he's got experience in here and he's done this for a couple of years. That's all great. I know that person would not make it to me for you to have me interview them if they weren't talented. What are they like as a person? How'd the call go? Were they nice? Did they seem bothered? Did they show up on time? All these things matter to me. Did you show up for the interview early? Did you actually show up on time? Were you dressed the part during your Zoom? These are the little things that you have to pick up on as an owner, a director, a VP, when you're building teams. My first few interviews when I got my first national director role, 3 times the person interviewing me never showed up to the Zoom. So I'm dressed in my, I got a suit jacket, suit and tie. By the way, since it was Zoom, I had shorts on underneath and sweatpants. So let's be honest, but super presentable in a location that made sense, that, was clear, was quiet. It clearly looked like I cut time out. Now, someone doesn't show up for the interview. What do? This is where I think culture comes in. It's okay. I hung out for 5-10 minutes. Nobody showed, didn't log off. Reached out to the recruiter, sent a couple of emails, got a hold of somebody, stayed on the whole time. They apologized and fixed it. I get where that could be a little frustrating for the person interviewing, but let's just put that aside for a second. So it happened 2 or 3 times. But each time I saw it as an opportunity to show the company the type of person I am. It's all good. Things happen. Short meeting ran late. I kept a really good attitude about it, and I kept a smile on my face about it. And everyone who apologized, I was like, yeah, it's no big deal. Totally get it. And, and obviously the interview process went well and I wound up working there. I say that because you know how many people when I go onto a Zoom, I'm like, hey, how's your day today? That's fine. And they'll be like in their bedroom or they're in an alley and they didn't get dressed and they don't look presentable. I don't care how talented you are. If that is how you show up, you're not going to be a good fit for me, right? And that's not to say that you're not great at your job, but we're building teams. We're building teams of people that have to interact with each other and be able to be professional at some point and build relationships and show they care. And if you can't do that trying to get a job, I don't know already that you're going to be a cultural fit, right? I still think that you can teach people skills. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to take an accountant maybe and try to turn them into a roofer. Totally get it, right? Maybe that's a different skill set, right? And that's something we're not willing to teach somebody. But what I will say is, let's be honest. Somebody could be in that trade. Maybe they're in construction, but it wasn't roofing and they're doing something different. But they're great. They really come with a lot of recommendations. They sound like a great person. You can tell that they really want the job. You can tell it's super meaningful to them. I will take a flyer on that person because I think in my heart, if I take that good person into a solid team, into a company with a good culture, we will take that person and get the most out of them. And then in return, they will give me the most that they have, right? So definitely from the start, I think it's important to really look at your recruiting team and talking to them. And remember, experience matters to get to you. Culture and the way they present themselves and the way they act should be the piece that separates them to anyone else who gets hired, right? So it's a great question, comes up a lot of times. What I will tell you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure it probably is going to be one of these extra questions that the team pulled off for me. Every single person that I have ever hired, all of them, I can't think of anyone who doesn't fit this boat, who was uber talented and unbelievable at sales, but was a cultural headache. The company always wants to hang on to that person for the longest time. Why? Because they make everybody money. But it never fails. Those people torch the house down. It becomes headaches. They start getting away with stuff. You start giving them passes on things because they're so talented and they're good. And at the end of the day, it's because they're making you money and they are burning the bridge of every other employee you have. So I look at that sometimes and remember, we had a guy who was doing 200 and something leads a month out of a retail environment, which if you're listening to this, is completely insane and had a really, really good amount of sales. I knew it was fishy and he was using, long story short, he was using lead lists to cheat the system and whatever, right? But I say that because I found out and I let the company know and they were like, oh, it's fine. No, but he's making money. And I said, it's not fine. You know why it's not fine? Because every other employee is not winning contests. They're not being rewarded. They're not being highlighted because this person who looks like they're doing a great job and we're wanting to give them a ton of money, it's killing the rest of all the other 100 people that are on that person's team. Eventually, the company left it up to me. I chose to let that person go. Everyone thought I was crazy. The next month, we broke a sales record without that guy. Why? Because everybody else picked up their game and felt better about it and wanted to be there and appreciated what we did, and they all stepped up. So it goes to show you, if you're heavily reliant on a person who's super talented, but they're a cultural nightmare, you have to do a better job of hiring people. I'm telling you now, it will cost you more in the long run than you're thinking you're going to make in the short term. So, James, I hope that helps you from Denver. All right, Carlos from Tampa, a solar guy. All right, hey, you know what I mean? Go pick up the question. What practices actually help new employees buy into a company culture quickly instead of just feeling like another worker on the job? Look, you only have so many days, but the reality of it is I think that company culture to instill in that employee starts, I go all the way back, probably starts pre them working there. One of the big things I like about social media and Instagram and Facebook, and especially YouTube, is does your company have at least a big enough social media? I don't want to say big in terms of followers. Does your company have at least a decent social media presence that highlights the fun of working at your job? And when I say that, it can't always be, and it happens a lot of time with canvassing people, canvassing managers and canvassing teams. It's all, you're on a yacht and you're throwing hundreds all over the place and you're doing all stuff. That doesn't last that long. That excitement comes and goes. That flashiness is really, people read through it, right? Looks fun for a minute, but it's not really valuable. But, a mix of some employee testimonials, highlights of things you do for the staff, people winning awards, having your staff be on your LinkedIn and your Instagram and Facebook, saying nice things about the company, talking greatly about you and people. That's how it starts. Because then that person wants to be a part of your company, right? Now, they don't just want to work there. Now they really want to work there. Then what you want to do is, why I talk to my recruiters constantly is because they're a part of the tone. I used to make this analogy all the time. When you go to a restaurant and you go and you meet the host or the hostess, and they are really mean to you. And, they are dismissive and they kind of blow you off and you still get sad. And then you get waited on and all the staff is not really nice. They don't come back. They don't check on you. Everything. But here's a weird thing. Everything goes right and the food is great. But the host was mean. The staff was just non-existent. Nobody cared. When it came to give it a check, they just threw it on the table. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is you go in and the host or the hostess is fantastic. Super nice, super accommodating, helps you out. You feel welcome. Take your jacket. You go sit at the table. All the servers are great. The manager checks on you. All that stuff is great. But guess what? They messed up your food. They forgot to order something. And they were very nice about it and they fixed the problem, right? They took it off the check and they apologized, right? But, the food was good. Food's good in both situations. But in situation two, everyone was super nice, but there were some headaches. I ask every single person, which restaurant are you going back to? If you had to go back for a second time, which restaurant would you go back to? You would always go back to the second one. Why? Because the people. The people make the difference. So, to set the tone for your culture how was your recruiter when they met the person? Are they a nice person? Are they friendly? How's the follow-up there, right? Every manager that meets a person, have you talked to them? Do they talk about company culture in their interview process before it gets to you? And then when a person's hired, yes, there is a part of saying, look, here's the deal. A lot of people like working here. We really enjoy doing a lot of great things for our people. One of the best business owners that I watch from afar, and I tend to really look at people who run businesses from different backgrounds, is Dana White from the UFC. Whether you like him or don't, doesn't matter. As a business owner, fantastic guy. And if you disagree with me, I think you're crazy. But what I love about his perspective on things is his employees come first. They didn't lay anybody off during COVID. They made it work. They do holiday parties. They do random things. He talks a lot about he wants people to have their kids come to the office to see what it's like where mom and dad work. And then he's constantly asking the staff, hey, did you get to your kid's game? Did you go see your kids play? What he says is, I hired you and I expect the job to get done. Whether that's 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 or whatever the job time is, as long as the job gets done, I want you to be able to say, I did everything I could and my work is done, but I also was able to have a life outside of here that makes me feel important. And to me, he says it out loud, right? So when you go to work there, from jump, that is what's expected. People love working here, but on the flip side of that, there is some accountability that comes with that, right? So I think in your first 30 days, you really need to set the tone there. Make sure the person has good mentors. Make sure they're surrounded by people that care about them. That's why I don't like to have toxic people. Make sure they have all the help they need. Make sure we celebrate their early wins. I run a lot of cool contests for new hires for no other reason that they can win something. It could be $50. It could be a gift card. It could be a cup of coffee. Doesn't matter. They won something. They're brand new. They love it. They go home. They tell their family about it. So you definitely want to establish culture, put it out in the universe, make sure your team's bought in, and then say to somebody, it's really great to work here. And we love it. We do a lot of things for you. But the only thing we ask of you in return is to be part of that culture. And, there's some accountability that goes with that, right? So, and that you got to start it before, and you only have a few days to build it in. Because once you miss that window, it's hard to then start that person from scratch, right? So that would be the way I would approach it, Carlos. Just some things to think about. Hopefully you're doing. All right, Ethan. He's an HVAC business owner from Chi-Town. All right, Chicago. What do you do when you have a top performer who brings in revenue but is toxic to your company culture? There it is. Told you guys. I knew it. I knew the team was going to. It never fails. We talked about question one. This happens so many times, especially in sales. Why? Here's why. Sales is a very independent gig. When you really think about sales, sales largely is, hey, I'm really good at my job. I want to focus on me. I know that because I've met some amazing salespeople, and most amazing salespeople will tell me the same thing. I don't train people. I don't teach people. It's not my jam. I come to work every day and I sell, and I'm really good at it, and that's just what I want to do. So, and I've met some amazing people to do it that way. As long as they have a good mentality, as long as they're open and honest about it, and it's not a toxic trait. I met the number one salesperson in a company I worked for who was the number one salesperson in the world in this window company I worked for. And he'd never train anybody, didn't teach anybody, none of that stuff was something he wanted to do. Company didn't bother him about it. And look, he didn't, and I say it now, you would think he's toxic, but here's what I'd say. One of the nicest people in the world. And he just would tell people like, hey, while I'm in the office, I don't mind giving you tips. Totally don't mind giving you, don't mind helping you out. So he was a very nice person, but he was also just like, hey, but when it comes to being in the home, I've done this job for a long time. Ride-alongs just aren't my thing. And so here's a person who's a top performer, operates as a top performer, but not toxic. He was very nice when he needed to be. He was very cordial, but he also was really good at his job. Totally respect that as a salesperson. I'm all for it. But if your top performer's toxic, we know this. They poison everybody. And by the way, the whole house is going to burn down. So my answer, it's a deal breaker. They got to go. And, if you're asking me this question, I'm guessing, Ethan, you've probably given a pass a little too much to a top performer who's probably not shown up all the time, maybe not shown up, pissed some people off, said some wrong things, acts independent, doesn't want to help. It's not worth the revenue. You would think it is in the short term, but I'm just being honest with you. You will find out, like all of us have found out over time, including me. I have made that mistake. I definitely made a mistake. I'm probably more than once. That we all have. And then once you make it, you're like, okay, I can't make this mistake anymore. It's taken time out of my life, right? So fortunately, here's what I'd tell you. If you want to try to coach him, you can, but sometimes, that revenue creates a blind spot, and my honest answer would be it's just time to cut the person. So, all right. Marcus is a flooring specialist from Dallas, Texas. Marcus, I'm a Cowboys fan. I probably shouldn't admit that live on a podcast, and probably I'm losing listeners as we go right now. And I live near Philadelphia, so I'm a real Dallas fan because I have the Giants. I'm not worried about the Jets. And I have the Eagles, and I'm centered in that world, and everyone hates me for it, but I ride with my team. But all right, how do you make sure culture stays consistent across multiple job sites and teams that rarely interact? Okay, look, you can't be everywhere. Totally get it. And you can't be with every crew all the time. Every one of us have different rules. But what you can do is it's on you, and I know this is where roles like directors and VPs and senior level people, I don't want to say our jobs are inundated with other stuff. They are. I'll be careful when I say this. I think sometimes top ownership, leadership, C-suite people wind up making excuses why they can't spend more time with people underneath them. And unfortunately, it burns your company culture. I meet all of our brand ambassadors. I shake their hand. I get on meetings. I have what I call open office hours, where I just block out an hour a week and anyone can jump onto the meeting. I just sit there for an hour and do my work. And if anyone jumps in, does not matter what level employee you are. If you want to jump in and have a question, a real question, not a problem, that's an HR thing. Not a concern, that's an HR thing. If you need help, you want advice, you want to meet me, I am available, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I like to be a part of recognition. So I can't get to everybody, but I can get to my management team. And my management team and I have to be in line and in sync. And so I don't want to fully rely on them because obviously I want to get to people as well. I like having roundtables, maybe once a month, just having, where you are available for everybody and do a town hall where you just take questions. People just want to be heard and they want to be recognized for the work they're doing, right? Those are two really important things to people. If you can make sure that you're the shining example of that, so you can look at your staff and say, hey, look, I travel the country. Like for me, last year I traveled 77 round trips. I'm not around all the time, right? So, but do I still make meetings and I go visit people and I still have Zooms and I don't make excuses for it. It doesn't matter. It's my job, right? But I know that here's the thing. If I don't do it, first of all, it's going to bite me in the ass down the road. But if I don't do it now, I'm going to have to spend the time later to do it anyways. So I might as well do it now. And then once you put it in the books, here's my thing. You got to stay consistent. You cannot do these things and then hey, guess what, guys? I'm going to do an open office hours. Feel free to jump in. Anyone, you don't have to. You're invited. Please don't feel like you have to do it. And then a week later, you take it off the calendar and it never gets back on. That people get bothered by that stuff, right? So you're asking people to contribute to the culture and be a part of it. You have to be a part of it too. So while you can't be everywhere, you kind of can be everywhere. And I would tell you this, please understand, the little things matter the higher you get. If the owner of your company came down and just shook your hand and said, I heard you're doing a great job. Do you know how much weight that carries? That is so important to a person who's coming up in the company that they're known. So don't think it has to be a present, a prize, cash. Don't get me wrong, all things are nice. But sometimes just a thank you from a person way above you goes a long way. So that's what I would tell you about how I would handle those things. So Tyler writes in. He's a general contractor from Phoenix, Arizona. I love Arizona. Love it, love it, love it. As a business grows, how do you maintain the same family-like culture you had when the company was smaller? First off, when you're smaller, it happens. You interact more naturally, right? When you're a 10-person team, it's all you guys have. The part of it, though, just like a family is, families get bigger and time gets spent away from each other. You really want to make sure, first off, if you really had to think about it, what are the things that you did when you were small that you want to continue to do when they're big? I made some notes here. So share personal wins, not just business wins. Birthdays, kids graduating, someone buying their first home. We used to do that all the time. When someone used to get a huge bonus, that was fine. That's a cool thing, right? That's great. What was cooler, though, is when I learned that somebody bought their first car. I would get on, like a manager would call me and say, hey, and I remember this, and we had a guy named Vlad. And Vlad was an employee of mine in New York. And Vlad bought his very first truck that he was fiending for forever. And so my manager called me and goes, hey, I just want to give you a heads up, Vlad. And I was like, yeah, Vlad was an event manager for us. He goes, he actually has done well enough here where he bought his very first truck. And I saw it there. I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, it's awesome. I was like, when is your next team meeting and whatever? So he's like, sent me an invite. I joined and I did nothing else but talk about Vlad buying his very first car. Not because it was about the money he made to do it. That's fine. It was about celebrating somebody's big life accomplishment, right? So culture is born in human moments, and that's a human moment, right? You don't build it by just saying, hey, look, Vlad made $100,000. Okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Hey, Vlad put a down payment on his first house. Shout out to Vlad. He's actually making a headway for him and his family. We just want you to know, Vlad, we're proud of you. That goes a bigger way. And the other thing is, no matter how big you grow, even if you have to start to segment that out, you can still have that same family vibe within your own, within teams, within departments, right? That you setting the tone for 10. If you have 100 people now, to me, you have 10 size family units, right? So it's still, something where I care about people. I want them to know I care about people. I constantly say that to them. I want them to know I have their best interest in heart. It always will go back to me for the same thing. I will give you every piece of me that you need. All I ask is for in return is accountability. All right, show up, do everything you need to do. If you do those things for me, I will help you grow. I will help you learn. and I will be here for when you need us the best that we can to best of our ability, right? And I think that goes a long way. I've been in companies before where I've come in new, and of course you have somebody who quits and tries to take a team of people with them. If you're a home improvement, you know this happens all the time. One guy quits and takes 15 people with him to a new company, and everybody freaks out. How does that happen? How does that happen? You know how that happens? You don't have a good company culture. You don't have a relationship with people. We are one of our worst, when I started one of the companies, we had a really horrible manager. We had to let him go in the first week I was there because it was toxic. I mean, ridiculously toxic. Had been rimmed by HR a bunch of times. Somehow I have no idea how the guys were still working there. But when I let him go, before I let him go, I knew better. I went and met with every single person on his team in person to shake hands and say hi, introduce myself. Talk to them about their family life. Talk to them about what they wanted to get out of working here. Built a relationship with them for a couple days. And then I let him go. And then, of course, what did he do? He tried to take his whole team with him. And you know how many people went with him? 0. Why? Because the entire time he was at the company, all he cared about was himself and driving those people crazy to make himself money. And then I showed up and I said, hey, I care about you. And I want you to be successful. And I want you to make money working here. And I have your best interest. I don't care about me. Doesn't matter. My bonus, my money, doesn't matter. I don't care. I just want you guys to be successful. And by osmosis, I'll be successful. And sure enough, nobody left. And we built an unbelievable market in New York around people who care. So I just say that because that's how important that family, caring about people on a personal level is. So Anthony writes in, he's in plumbing. Shout out plumbers. My dad and my brother are plumbers from Orlando, Florida. What role does leadership play in setting the tone for culture? And how do you personally keep it alive? Look, leaders are the thermostat for culture. You not only you set the temperature, but you keep the temperature. You keep it right where it needs to be. I said it before in one of the earlier questions to me, it's always about consistency. I value respecting people and I want my credibility to be intact, right? So there's a lot of things that I would tell you. I live by the words I say. Like, I'll give you a really good example. I know this drives people insane about me sometimes. I do not go for drinks with my staff. I haven't in any job I've had in the last probably 10 years. I know way too many managers and bosses that invite employees out for drinks and happy hour, and they say it builds relationships, and that's how we get to know each other. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You just want to go for drinks with people and put it on the company. Having a drink with me does not build a relationship. Me caring about you at the office and making sure you do your job and you have all your tools and I'm there for you and celebrate you, that's how I build a relationship with you. It doesn't get done because I go for dinner with you after work. And I think what happens is you have these leadership roles where they think that the best way to build a culture is to take everybody out to dinner and buy them drinks. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not. Because what happens is, first off, outside the fact that people get drunk and do stupid things and probably have inappropriate relationships, and that becomes an HR issue. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen teams of people fall apart for this reason and companies go nowhere. You think in the short term it helps you. Oh, we had a great team building environment. Okay, cool. What'd you guys do? An activity? Did you go do something? Nah, we went for happy hour. That's not, as much as you would think that's a great thing, it's not. And that starts with you. So I tell my staff all the time, I will help you in any way possible, work related. I want to get to know you and I hope you have your family come in. We'll do a lot of cool stuff. But drinking and going for those kind of things, no, that's not how we do it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've built massive teams that way, right? And I haven't lost people. So you're the thermostat, you set the temperature, you keep it consistent, but you have to have credibility and you have to stick by what your rules are for how you set that culture, right? And that's how I set the culture. And then, by the way, I avoid it, my team avoids it, and then we have no issues. I mean, I'll say none. We have very minimal issues when it comes to any of those things, right? I don't have to worry about them. I have the least HR issues of any department ever that I ever work in because I keep it. There's a million ways to do a million cool things to set the tone for culture that do not have to do with going for drinks and going for dinner. Just being honest with you guys. But, culture lives and dies by what leaders tolerate and what leaders celebrate. And what I would ask you is, what are you tolerating versus what are you celebrating? If you can answer those questions, then you'll actually have a little bit clearer path of what your role and what leadership plays in building the tone for culture. So great question, Anthony. Brandon writes in from the kitchen remodeling in San Diego. How do you evolve your culture to keep younger workers engaged while still respecting your older veteran employees? All right. So this is where I always laugh a little bit because I talk about myself in this kind of vein. I'm young enough to be surrounded by understanding somewhat of younger culture. It also helps that I have a 17-year-old kid, so kind of like, I keep up there. But I'm old enough to have a ton of experience to be able to deal with people who are older than me, right? I like to think of myself a little bit sometimes as bridging the gap. But, it's a balance. First off, we're all actually kind of similar if you're hiring correctly. Outside of, you have a younger generation of workforce coming into their first job, and you have an older generation that probably at some point wants to exit their job. Taking all that out of what it is for now, part of it is giving the older generation an idea that, hey, we want to mentor, but we also have to be open to learning because we don't know all the new stuff, right? I probably can't take somebody who's 65 and be like, hey, I want you to do our social media. It's probably a better job for a 25-year-old, right? But does that mean that the older generation doesn't want to learn it, right? So I try to set up an environment where we can mentor each other. There is always something to learn from someone younger. It's just as much as there's always something to learn from someone older. And I cannot tell you how many new ideas I get from younger people and how many new, great ideas of managing people I get from older people. One of the best things I've ever heard of how to do this is by Jeff Bezos. And like I said, I heard this. I've heard him say it before. Whether he really does it in his meetings or not, I don't know. I'm not there. But at Amazon, what they do is when they have a meeting and they have to pitch ideas, the most junior person has to go first and Jeff goes last. Why? Because if Jeff goes first and says, I got an idea, what do you think most people who are younger are going to do? That's a great idea. It's a great idea, Jeff. Great idea. Love it. Why? Because the boss said it. Set your meetings so that the younger people have to give their ideas first with no backlash. It's not a stupid idea, right? As long as things are well thought out. I'm not saying there's no stupid ideas. Let's be honest. But what my point is you want to set an environment where your younger generation can participate comfortably and safe. You set up with your older generation that they can learn so that it goes both ways. Look, at some point, this is what I say about younger people. Are they here to take your job? 100%. Let's not sugarcoat it. Younger people don't come to a job to stay in the same position forever. They don't want to be entry-level people. But older people want to get to the point where they can grow their career as far as they can and retire. So there shouldn't be so much like hate of like, oh, this person wants my job. This person wants me keep me from getting a job. If you build your company right, there's plenty of room for both those things to exist. But I want to make sure that we set up these mentor relationships where it kind of works both ways, where you what does your older generation of workers want to learn? Who on your younger staff can teach it to them, right? So breaking the silo out of that is huge. And to me, I think that's how you bridge the gap. And if somebody younger comes in and doesn't want to learn from someone older, and someone older doesn't want to learn from somebody younger, I'd rather get rid of those people and replace them. Because my job is the longevity of the business, not to make everybody happy in the moment. So that's how I would feel it. And I just think, and especially in today's environment, it should be so easy today to get older people to want to learn from younger people because the younger generation is so in tune with so many of the new AI tools and social media, which if you're older, it's almost, unless you're like me who keeps involved in it, it's so difficult to learn. And if you're younger, you know those skills, that's great, but you don't know how to manage. You don't know how to be a leader. You don't know how to set the tone. There's things that you need to learn as well. So set up really good mentoring relationships. Make sure your meetings are set up so that younger people can contribute. And it should feel like everyone has a place at the table. And why I respect experience and I lean on experience, especially experienced people, totally get it. It doesn't mean that younger people can't be part of the conversation. And if you don't involve them, like if I have a top level meeting and I just cut out all the younger people because they're young, what is example am I setting for my older people? Hey, don't worry about it. I cut them out, so should you. I would stay away from that. So, Pierre, you are an electrical contractor from Houston, Texas. All right. What role does training play in reinforcing company culture beyond just teaching technical skills? So look, training is where culture gets taught until it sticks. It's just what it is. Technical training, I totally get. Like that's, you show people to do things, that's fine. But cultural training is more about showing them how to work together. Now, I know that it drives some people crazy. I have family that work in HR and they build these really great training programs about culture and accountability and respect. And then we have people take them and we have these, mission charts and value statements and all these things, right? Or mission statements and value charts. Culture is not a poster on a wall. And to me, culture is not a 1 hour HR training you have to take. You have to, one of the things I like to do with like certain roles, and so when you become an assistant manager for me, we have a weekly meeting where we talk just about leadership, not work. Not what I mean by that is not the X's and O's of scripts and closes and all things. No, it's about growing your career because I'm growing you professionally, right? And in those leadership talks, in those coaching moments, like sometimes I'll run a weekly meeting. I'll say, okay, here's the scenario. So this person came in, this person did this, we're stuck here. I give them a whole scenario. And then we talk it out. All of us talk about what our ideas are to have to solve the problem, right? And what it's doing is it's giving me really good insight to where they are from a maturity standpoint, a cultural standpoint. It really helps me truly understand where they're coming from and then the things I still have to teach them, right? So culture training in a lot of companies falls flat because when it comes time to do it, a lot of us just go, oh, HR will do that. Okay, well, that's fine. HR can put that together. But also I want to empower HR to not just put a slideshow together, because this is what I really appreciate about having family in HR. HR is inundated with problems. Like nobody calls HR and just says, hey, by the way, I do because I know better. Nobody calls HR and just goes, hey, I just want to say thank you. And people are like, for what? Like, no, just say thank you. You're doing a great job. And, HR says, do you have a problem, a concern? You're like, no, just want to say thank you. And they're blown away because no one ever does it, right? And so when I've met HR people and I talk to them and I say, hey, what's your company, culture like? And they hate it. And I go, well, are you guys ever tasked to do something about it? And they're like, yeah, but it's always a questionnaire, a boring slideshow. And I'm like, well, how would you change it? And a lot of HR people have some amazing ideas and they want that to be part of their job. And they get excited about doing projects that aren't just about solving some headache of a person at work. But then we don't give them the power to do it, right? So training could be fun, could be scenarios. You got to think outside the box. But I would say that I tie that culture training and reinforce it into a little bit of career growth, scenario training, and learning these skill sets are ultimately what I tell the staff is how you get promoted here. Can't just be X's and O's. It has to be how you do in some of the ancillary things that we're going to teach you. Then they get buy-in, HR gets excited, I get to be part of it, and then the meetings are way more fun. And they're way better. They're just, they're just not afterthoughts where people have to sit down next to a computer and go, I'm like, hey, what are you doing today? And they want to roll their eyes like, oh, I got to do this training for 2 hours and it sucks. And I got to watch a video and answer questions, Okay, that's horrible, right? It just is. Make those things better. Even if it's once a quarter, it doesn't have to be all the time. It could be 4 times a year. It could be twice a year, but just don't put it off. That's my point. So Javier, I hope that helps you. All right, looks like we got 2 more the team put together for me. Luke from Window and Door Installation Company in Philadelphia. All right. And by the way, just so you know, if you never joined the show before, I do not use company names because, some people want to know questions and I don't want to put them on blast. So just if you're asking and wondering, I just, like to tell you the industry that they're in and what city they're in, and maybe hopefully like you'll get something out of it. But never, please, if you're writing in, I'm not concerned about what company you work for. I don't ever want to do that. As much as I'd love to promote great companies, I also don't want to put anybody on blast. It's not fair. And I also don't know the situation there, just so you guys know, so I would never do that. By the way, I'm not saying any of these people or these companies that I'm talking about today have culture issues, but just to be fair. How do you handle conflict between crew members in a way that doesn't break down your culture? Luke, that's a fantastic question. Conflict is inevitable. How you handle it defines your culture. So first of all, you can't let it fester. You can't know about a problem and just brush it under the rug. This isn't a bad relationship. where we brush things under the rug for years and then all of a sudden everybody gets divorced. No. We got to bring people together. We got to hear people out. Even if it's hard, sometimes I like bringing people face to face. I try to figure out what the issue is. It's not about particular people being a problem. I don't like he said, she said. That's very difficult to deal with. And like in terms of picking sides, I'm trying to be very democratic about what I'm listening to. Obviously, I'm talking about things non-HR related. I only say that because obviously people will ask about conflicts and you're looping in HR, and then the process of that is a lot different, right? Then there's mediation involved and we all know how that goes. But really, we're just talking about culture. And so I'll give you a really interesting one. Like I do this once every quarter. I sit down with all the managers and I go, it's time to talk about Tony. And it's a really funny meeting we have. And like, what do you mean? I go, all right, so here's what I want to do. I want to go around the table and I want you, and so we did this little job all the time. So, every quarter. But we'd sit at a table and I'd have every manager fly in, come in, get them all set up and we'd all talk. And I say, okay, let's go. We went around the room and we did all day. We talked about everything bad, everything good, wins, losses. Every manager talked about things they liked, things they didn't, things they would change. And then at the end, for fun, and this was always fun, and I told everybody, I will not take it personal. I want you to tell me how I can do better at my job to help you. And I always preface it with this, and this was a learning lesson, right? Of teaching them how to have difficult conversations. That's why I do it. You would know, what I would tell people is, you can communicate with me in a way that gives me criticism, but doesn't make me feel defensive. So this is the exercise for you guys. You're going to talk to your boss. I'm putting you on a spot. You have to tell me what you want me to do better without me taking offense to it. Because if you can do it to me, then you can do it to your staff. And I want you to be thoughtful about it. And, people go around the room and a lot of people, still people be shy about doing it. But eventually somebody would say, hey, you know what? First off, I really appreciate everything you do for us. I appreciate you talking to us the way you do. I really wish that there was more dedicated one-on-one time. I feel like sometimes because the way the world is, some of us get lost because our markets are smaller. Great way to just say, hey, I need more of your help, right? So they were saying it in a way where it's something I could work on. It's something that can be done. And then I have to show them in return how not to be defensive, right? Hey, well, you don't understand. I'm really busy and I got a lot on my plate right now and I just didn't get your markers. No. You take a breath as the leader and you say, hey, I appreciate the feedback. I think it's definitely something I can work on. How about after the meeting, let's just sit down because I'll show you how my day is organized. And then let's try to figure out, maybe you could help me figure out when you need more time and I can happily help you. And then I would say, does anybody else feel the same way? And then I would be able to adjust some things. So it's, first of all, you got to be a great leader to put yourself out there and tell people, I want you to tell me what I don't do well and in a good way, right? And I also want to teach you how to say it. And, and then they go back and not only do they know now how to handle situations better, goes back to what I said before, they feel heard, right? They feel like there's a conflict and know how to address better in their own markets. So I like talking to people, sitting them down face to face. Sometimes I can't, I have to have one-on-one because the tension is too much. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do as the leader is not really find blame. I'm trying to find a solution, right? And I think that's the way I always come across in these situations. I'm not here to blame anybody unless there's blame to be given. But let's be honest. For now, in this scenario, there's not blame. It's just a solution. And I want the people that I'm giving the solution to be part of the solution. I want them to give their feedback how it get better, right? So that is how it's done, but it has to be respectful. It has to be resolved. It has to be resolved quickly. And I say the same thing after a conflict's done. When it's done and it's all wrapped up, I say to the staff, say to the two people, here's the deal. Are we good? Because if we leave, and I know some people like this and don't, but this is how I operate. When we leave here, are we good? If you tell me we're good and we leave here and somebody comes back to me and tells me that you said that it wasn't resolved, I have to let you go. So hear me now. Is this issue resolved? And do you feel comfortable with how it's resolved? And if the answer is no, that's okay. We're going to keep working at it right now. But we're not allowed to have a conflict go unresolved or go resolved where you're going to leave and say that's not how you wanted it done. So, and I'm really a stickler about that, because then when what happened is, and this happens, I will still say all those things and I will leave a situation and there will be an employee who turns around and someone says, hey man, how did that go? And they'll go, Tony didn't even listen to me. And then what'll happen is the rest of the staff goes, that's impossible. I know he does, because my credibility's there, because I've done it a million times. And then what happens is naturally the team wants to weed that person out. That is why my credibility is so important. That's why my consistency is so important. That's why how I handle issues has to be the same all the time, so that when something comes up, if some employee was to say, oh, well, Tony didn't do it, everyone will go, that can't be true. That's not his style. So all those things match for how I handle those situations. But at the minimum, don't let it fester. Because the longer you avoid it, the more problems you're going to have. Oh, we'll talk about it next week. Just talk about it now. Because by the time you get to next week, the issue is going to be that much longer and the meeting is going to be that much longer. So just put some side aside and take care of it. All right. And the last question today, wrapping it up. Derek is in Atlanta, and Derek is in the painting business. All right. How do you know if your culture is truly healthy, and what is the best way to measure it? All right. Let's see. This is an interesting question. I think the very first thing that I would tell you is turnover. When I worked in my last company, when I started there, in the first 30 days, 79% of people would turn over. It's mind-blowing. The expense of that's crazy. And when I see that, someone will come to me and say, oh, that's typical sales and lead gen. People just turn over. No, it's not. Not at that rate, it's not. And in the first couple months and in the first year, I was able to get that down to 12%. Why? Because you have to look at your turnover. That's how you measure it. Like, it's a really simple way. If people are leaving, your culture is screwed. And then some of you say, well, it could be pay, look, people will leave anyways. There could be better opportunities and better jobs, and that's totally fine. I actually tell people when they start, I hope two things happen more than anything else. You're so successful here that your career continues on and you move forward, and I will be excited and proud of you. Or you learn so much here that when you do leave us, which could happen and probably will, you are just better off for it, that when you get that next job that you wanted, that at the minimum, you look back and say, I appreciated working there with Tony. I learned a lot from working there. And I get that feedback all the time. So I know that's how we operated in every business I've been in. And then the other thing is, sometimes you could track employee referrals. You could talk to people. There's, some people do Survey Monkeys. I'm not a huge fan of that, but you can, but everyone always, like, we did those at a company I worked for before, where every quarter we did a survey. But the problem is you have to put who your boss was. And the person I reported to only had 3 of us. So 33% chance I could know it's me. So I didn't feel comfortable answering questions about, the culture and the company and all that stuff, because people would know it's me. I always felt that way. Look, a healthy culture, before it's even measured, you just know it. You walk in, it's how people treat each other. It's saying hi, how many issues you have. You know a healthy culture and you know a not healthy culture. If you have to ask yourself if your culture is healthy, it's not. Let's just be honest, it's not. I always had a pulse on it, but I would definitely look at, if you're asking for actual analytics, turnover is probably the best way I could say. And I would continually, the other one I think it's really big, and it's not an analytic way to do it, but you have to go talk to the people on the ground level. That is the only way, to me. And I'm glad this is the last question, because this is the number one most important thing I will tell any of you out there who watch the show. Listen, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. As we bring the show to a close, obviously my name is Tony Rodriguez. I am the VP here at Current Home. And as we bring the show to a close, this is the point I would make on this thing. If you're a vice president, a C-suite, an owner, a national director, senior level person, kudos to you. I know how hard your job is. But if you're not once in a blue moon mingling, talking, visiting, going in and shaking and saying hi to the people who are at the bottom level of your business, you are failing. And I'm sorry I feel that. I'm actually not sorry I feel that way. That's how I feel. If you want to know about your company culture, talk to the people it affects the most. And that's usually the people who've been there for under 3 years. Let's just say it that way, right? Or your new hires, because they're the first people who will be quick to tell you the craziness going on, what's really happening, what they heard, what was it like when they came aboard. That is the best way, right? And that I get it. Sometimes you got to take some time aside, but I say it all the time, and some people agree and some people disagree, and that's fine. Depends on your role. But I am a firm believer, and I don't think anyone can convince me otherwise, that no matter what my level is at any point in any company, that I will want to know what's going on the ground floor. And the only way to do that is to meet the people. Talk to them, shake their hands, say hi, celebrate them, know what's going on. Now, granted, if you work in a huge business with hundreds and thousands of employees, or if you're the CEO of Walmart, just using it for example, are you going to go know every person? No, of course not. But should you have walked some of your stores and said hi to some of your cashiers, shake some of the hands of the people that greet people at the door, talk to them away from their managers, away from their assistant managers, just like regular staff, and say hi? 100%. That's doable, right? So if I could leave you with anything about culture, you have to be involved. Don't leave it up to other people. As always, I appreciate you. Thank you as always. Here at the In the Home podcast, we're excited. Right now, we've taken questions from lead generation, culture, mortgage, dealer network programs. More to come. But as always, if you like, share, subscribe, you'll be able to find us on Spotify, and you'll be able to find us on YouTube. And outside that, hey, make some money. Have a great day, everybody.